The focus is of the film is on Bergman's what I call crazy mad year in 1957, where the year begins with the premiere of The Seventh Seal, which is one of his first masterpieces. He does so many things this year. The year ends with the premiere of Wild Strawberries, which is his second big masterpiece. So, in between these two films, he produces 4 major theater productions. He makes a television movie, and he also shoots a third feature. And he has 4 relationships. He's married to Gun Grut. He's having an affair with Bibi Andersson. He meets his next wife to be, Käbi Larite, and then he also meets his 5th wife to be, Ingrid von Rosen. And he has 6 children, although he thinks he has 5. And he's 39 and is just a self-combusting, fantastic artist. And almost everything he does that year turns out to be extreme high quality. The television film isn't that great, but I mean, Sweden has only had television for a year by 1957, so he's trying new ground and really likes it. People don't think of Bergman as a television director, but he did make a lot of TV. Well, I think Ingmar Bergman is the most interesting Swede there ever was, and I don't think we'll ever have quite as interesting person again. And maybe nobody will get as much resources that he got either. I had made another Bergman project, and at the end of that I saw that, wow, Wild Strawberries and The Seventh Seal come out in the same year. That's amazing. Someone should make a film about that. And at that time, since I just finished a Bergman project, I wasn't really super excited of making a new Bergman film. But then a few years passed, and then now it's its 100th birthday, and I was asked if I wanted to make the film for its centenary. And I said I would if I could make it about 1957. And at that time I thought, you know, just the fact that these 2 films come out in the same year, that was enough for me. I hadn't started doing my research yet. And that year just grew and grew, and every day when I went to work, it was just, this is amazing, more stuff is happening. The fun thing was also that a number of those people who were very important to Bergman during that year are still alive and could tell stories about that year. People like Gunnar Lindblom, one of his favorite actresses, Katinka Farago, who was his production manager, Gösta Ekman, who was his assistant director. A number of people who are very famous in Sweden. If they hadn't been alive, it would have been hard to make the film. But because they were alive and were talkative, just one thing led to another, that it was possible to make this kind of dream film I had of 1957, which just got more interesting along the way. I don't think there's any Swede who's as thoroughly documented as Ingmar Bergman is. He was very careful to have behind-the-scenes footage of almost everything he did. He saved everything he wrote. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of pictures of him. So I mean, it wasn't difficult. You didn't have to fill a film with images of him and his life. The problem is there's so much of it. So I had many young slaves working for me, and they grew old during those years. You know, I think he was a fantastic filmmaker. I love his films. I was introduced to them. I mean, I'm Swedish, but I grew up outside of Sweden. I sound like American. I'm sorry. But I was introduced to Bergman when I was at university in America, and I thought I wanted to get to know what it's like to be Swedish and figure out what Swedish culture is all about. So I took a course in Bergman and thought, oh, this is amazing. And it was really, at that time in the 90s, it was, you know, if you went to an American university and were arty, it was mandatory to know your Bergman and to be able to quote him, and it was kind of thought of as hip. But when I got back to Sweden in '92, and I thought, like, well, let's talk about Bergman, nobody wanted to talk about him. I was a freak. And people wanted to talk about Scorsese and Tarantino, and of course, not Bergman. So I had to put a lid on that for many years until now. So what Bergman has meant to me is discovering my own culture, I think. But I think young people have a completely different set of, you know, cultural standpoints than I do, and the generation above me. And I think that's good. I think culture should move along. But it's sad if we forget the pioneers, and Bergman was a pioneer. One of my aims with this film was actually to try to introduce him and his films to a younger audience. And I mean, when you see the film, people in the audience will laugh, and that's not something you really equate with Ingmar Bergman laughter. And it's not that young people have to laugh all the time to be entertained, but I tried to make an entertaining, fun movie about Bergman. And I mean, also Bergman was an entertainer too, and we forget that he's very good at entertaining and keeping his audience in his hand. In Sweden, there's a huge interest for biopics, portraits of famous Swedes, and I think that has a little bit to do with the country's changing very rapidly, and people want to remember the 60s and 70s. So there's a fair amount of nostalgia in that, I think. But I think it has to do with the docu-soaps that came in the 90s, that people actually realized through television and popular culture that it's fun to watch reality. Because after the first reality shows, that's when documentaries started taking off. So I think we should be thankful for something that most people hate.